Hello and welcome to Almost 30 Podcast, baby.
What's up, everybody? It's your BFFs, Linds and Krista. We are also best friends in real life. We're business partners. We created Almost 30 from our closet floors, and here we are 7 years later. We live on opposite coasts, but we see each other as much as we can to record and just feed this growing business brand community. And we're really excited you're here. If this is your first episode, hello. And if you're coming from the Radhi camp, welcome. We're so glad to have you.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you're coming from the Radhi world, we're really, really glad to have you.
Truly.
Because you are an amazing person with amazing energy. We had a first conversation with her probably a year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. One of the best. Just truly, her and Jay are even better in person. Like, deeply present, dialed, kind, warm, like giving people. It's really wild because Lindsay and I are lucky enough to have access in our space and world to some amazing and powerful people. And almost all of them are as kind and magical in person, but some of them you're like, wow, you're really doing it. You're really doing it on a big level in the world. And then in personal life, you're just as pleasant and amazing. So I'm really grateful that Radhi came on the podcast again. And again, if you want to listen to that first one, you can search Radhi Almost 30 and you can dive into our conversation around confidence, around her journey, around friendship. It was just really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's always nice when, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, where who you see online really aligns with when you meet them, which is like a weird thing to say, but it's actually very rare. And it's really nice to experience that in our space and to really feel their authenticity. And I know authenticity is kind of like a bleh word, but to really feel on an energetic level, like them being themselves wherever they go, no matter if they are in front of, thousands of people or just with us intimately in a podcast studio. And that's something I definitely think about a lot and strive to be, because it could be easy to like just be a little chameleon and kind of be what you think people need you to be in those different arenas. But I feel like Jay and Radhi, and she talked about this a little bit, really make an effort to be themselves, no matter where they are. She was talking about in this conversation just how she's noticed that like when she's really authentic to who she is, it disarms people. Right before we met for the interview, I think it was the morning before, she did the Today Show, which was like such a big deal and so exciting. We were talking about kind of the prep for that and just that whole experience. And she's someone who is so beautiful, so naturally beautiful. And she did not wear makeup, really.
Icon.
Like I think she had maybe like a little rouge on the cheeks and maybe a little mascara. But when you're on TV, so many people are caked up because of the cameras, the lights, the whatever. And I think one of the anchors was like, oh, like off camera, she's like, oh my God. She's like, you look beautiful. Like you're not wearing any makeup. And Radhi all of a sudden became like a little self-conscious of like, oh yeah, like that's just like what I do. Like I didn't even think about it. But she noticed that it really kind of disarmed this woman and like just kind of created like a nice little rapport where Radhi was just being herself. And so yeah, I adore that about her. We had such a good freaking time. It was so nice to see her in New York. And one of the things we talked about that you and I were kind of chatting about before this was Radhi is someone who has an online presence. 2 million people are following her on Instagram alone. And she is such a bright light. When you go to her page, she is funny and positive and inspiring and thought-provoking and reflective. And she was saying how sometimes she gets kind of like feedback, comments about like, are you always this happy? Are you always this like, just, good? And she was saying how she felt like people didn't understand the responsibility as someone with a platform. And for her personally, so this is not like better or worse, but for her personally, it felt better to, if she's going through something, which she does, she's a human being, to have like, you know, her close friends or family be the ones that she goes to in order to process and share and really reserve the energy that she has after that to show up to her platform in an inspiring, impactful way. Again, neither better or worse, but it was an interesting way for me to think about it because I think, you know, we see a lot of people today just kind of sharing in a way that isn't as thoughtful. And so they're sharing like kind of like in things that are in process and totally not integrated. And it can stir up this energy online, especially like in their own way, in their own platform. And it reminded me of just like when we are scrolling, we're kind of interacting with like everyone's nervous system. And sometimes like I scroll and I feel fine. And there are other times I scroll and I don't feel fine. And usually when I don't feel fine, it's because I've hit on some accounts where they're sharing things that feel a little dysregulated and I'm kind of blending with them. So I just thought it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I have so much to say. I want to fall out of my chair. I just feel like, and I'm so grateful that she opened up this conversation. And I think this is a common thread that I've heard with a lot of our friends and a lot of the people that I know that have much larger accounts that are in the millions. And I just find it very interesting that I find that women only do this to accounts of other women. And that I don't see any women going to like Andrew Huberman or like, you know, other men that are like leaders in the space, even Jay, and being like, hey, where are you having a bad day? Like, when am I seeing you having a bad day? Like, are you always happy? And there's this thing where we women feel like women have to show all sides of them and have to present everything to feel safe or to feel like they're normal or to feel like we're not comparing ourselves to them. And there's just like this expectation that we hold of women to share so much more personal things than we do of men. And I just think it's incredibly unfair. Like, we're okay with men just being one dimensional when they share online. And we're like, oh, I love this content. Thanks for sharing your podcast, or thanks for sharing this, you know, research, or thanks for sharing this like one bit of information. But for women, it's like, if you're not sharing like your children, your family, what you're going through, your hard times, your body struggles, all these, then it's like, there's like something wrong, or like you need to be sharing more. And then there's also the assumption that like your online life is your real life. Like, we need to remember that our online life is not our real life. And when we're going to people and saying, hey, you need to share about when things are bad, it's like you are forgetting that the real life has precedent. And it's actually the healthiest thing to process what you're going through with your real life and with the real people that matter in your real life. And I don't think we really realize the impact that like sharing about things, especially, you know, Roddy's not a mother and neither am I, but I can imagine that if you're a mother and you have children and you're sharing about things about your children or your family online, that will impact them in the future. Like, we've never had this as like a culture or society where we're kind of growing up with children that were online. We are also online, you know, our children's children will be online, and everything is recorded and everything is going to exist forever, and everything people can react to or people can have comments to. And it's almost like what we say flippantly, you know, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, where you'd say it just casually and it doesn't matter and it didn't mean anything at the time, is now recorded, unfortunately. So it's like everything just has so much more weight. And I think we're just really the first generation that's really processing that and working with that and like having the gravity of that. And I experienced that, you know, as a much smaller creator too, where I'm like, oh, I do want to bring people along the journey of what I'm going through. And I do share very openly about things that are hard and my struggles and things that I'm going through. But it's like, I also don't want a lot of opinions and perspectives about my process. And I want to, like what she's doing, be with the people that I'm impacting or are impacting me in whatever scenario first with things. And I think too, it feels a little leaky for me to be like, I'm struggling, I'm going to go to the internet. It's like, no, I'm struggling, I'm going to go to my self-care practices. I'm going to go to my therapist. I'm going to go to the things that help bring me back to center, like nature or meditation or baths or, you know, screaming, whatever it is, and then kind of come back. But it's like, I don't want my brain to get used to me going directly to social media when I feel like I'm not feeling myself. So yeah, I feel like that's such a relevant topic, even for people that have smaller platforms. It's like, how much are we sharing online? How much are we expecting people to share? When are we coming into this like portal and world of social media and assuming it's reality? Like, how can we pull ourselves out to just be reminded that like people are curating their feed because it's not exactly who they are?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. A whole
This
sermon
is
coming out on the 8th. So I've announced my pregnancy already. But I'm going to do just kind of an episode a little bit on my experience of keeping this kind of close and private for a long time. And I've done this with other areas of my life. I feel like I shared about my wedding like right after. And it's something that like I didn't know I would want to do that until you're kind of in the process. And I've definitely gotten like messages and feedback that are like, well, I didn't, I would love to like know more and I would love for you to share. And yeah, it's something that I might completely change my mind on at some point or another. I just kind of like flow with it. But I've been just super, I think, sensitive to it almost feels like an open wound when it's like online and then I'm unable to actually fully feel and be in the experience because there's this like open wound online, and wound's the wrong word, but it just feels maybe leaky. It's like out there, but I'm also experiencing it. And so I'm unable to fully experience it. So that's why it was like important that, we kept this private for as long as I could hide it, honestly, in a way. And I think to your point about like kids, yeah, I mean, I think about that so much. And there's, I have no like judgment towards anyone who share their kids online, but I do think about the fact that kids have like phones in their faces a lot, where it's like recording, and I want to be super mindful of that, when I have a child, where it's like, I don't want that to become like a regular thing, that they have this like thing in their face, they're being recorded, it's out there on the internet for anyone to pick up and see. And I don't know, there's just like a very interesting energetic. And I've seen some of our friends in this space kind of make a little bit of a shift and no longer share their children, which is interesting. But to your point, I think we're kind of the first generation where we have had our life with no social media. And then we've had this life with social media. I think the next generation has kind of always had it, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 2 generations. But I think there's a part of us that kind of misses the life without it. At least I do.
Yeah, I know there's that. Yeah, I don't consider it, but yeah, I definitely see the benefits of it. I think it's, I can't imagine what it will be like. And my friends that have children, it is such a nuanced thing where we don't know really the impact on the brain yet. We don't really know all of these things in the way that it's like impacting them, but it's huge. And it's interesting to think like too, as a creator and a content creator, it's almost like sometimes like the thought is that you are trading your privacy and you're trading your aspects of your life for the life to, it's like, that's what's so interesting about being a content creator influencer. It's like, well, so you want to be private, but you can't necessarily be private if you're trying to monetize the access to your life or your thoughts or your you know what I mean? It's like such a weird game, like where it's just all new and it's all something that we're all figuring out like in real time.
Totally. Unless you niche out and you're just making like sourdough bread, Yeah,
dude.
Sometimes I wish that was me.
Where it's just like a shot of just your hands kneading bread. You're just like, this is and yeah, no one's messaging the kneading bread woman and saying, how are you having a bad day? Tell me about your bad day. You know what I mean? Like, dude, that's the whole thing. It's like it's either niche down to a level that's like incredible, or you are open and lifestyle, and then people want everything. They're like, people to me, they're like, did you regret getting married? I'm like, that is not a conversation for me and a stranger to have. Like,
Totally.
I don't, first of all, at all. But it's like, it's just like, would you understand what you're asking me? Like, this is like,
100%.
if I was to tell you something and not tell the actual person that's directly impacted, is like, it's wild. It's a wild and crazy world. But Radhi is so beautiful in the way that she shares, and she's so open. And I love just being present for her process of her truth and her exploration. And she's got such an incredible YouTube. I know she's got big things coming out next year, which I'm really excited about too. And if you're also a fan of Radhi's, I'm sure you are of Jay's. And he's been on Almost 30 a few times as well. So you can search Jay Shetty Almost 30 and find other great episodes with him.
So check her out on all socials, Radhi Devlukia-Shetty. Enjoy this episode. If you loved it, please share with a friend. That's how we've grown from 0 to billions. But we really appreciate
That's how
you.
we became billionaires.
Yeah. We have new episodes every single week. We have not missed a week in 7 years. Sorry, bragging, but
That's how you get successful. People ask how you're successful. It's like, just keep going.
Just be consistent.
Yeah. Truly.
But we will see you on the other side of this one. Enjoy it.
We love you.
This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar. Now you can get 20% off every IQ Bar product plus free shipping when you text almost to 64,000. That's almost to 64,000. We were in the studio the other day and Krista was like, "Ooh, you brought IQ Bars? Did you bring me banana nut?" I was like, "Yes, girl, I brought your banana nut." It's also my favorite, so I was giving her some of my favorites. But we are obsessed with IQ Bar. Finally, a bar that is healthy, that doesn't cause like a mid-afternoon crash because of all the sugar. It is just super, super yummy, nourishing without weird ingredients. It's the only bar optimized for your brain and body. It's packed with brain nutrients, plant protein, and fiber, all with next to no sugar or net carbs. It's just super clean, and I'm obsessed. And the texture is moist and chewy, which is just how a bar should be. I will have these before a workout, after a workout. I might have this in the morning. I will have this as like a midday snack. It's the best. It's made with real food, not chemicals. And I think you are going to feel the effects of all the goodness in it. Mouthwatering flavors like toasted coconut chip. That's one of their newer ones that I'm obsessed with. I also love the banana nut, as I said, but they also have almond butter chip, peanut butter chip, and more. I also love their lemon blueberry. Okay, yeah, give me a little just like sweetness that's like super healthy and packed full of protein and good fats. So enjoy these bars. I'm excited for you to try finally a bar that doesn't have crap in it and makes you feel good and also tastes really good. So you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus get free shipping. To get that 20% off, just text almost, ALMOST, to 64,000. Get your discount. Text almost to 64,000. That's almost to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Before I got pregnant, I was really excited to find a alcohol brand that I loved and I trusted the ingredients and could enjoy every once in a while. I was bringing it to parties, like everywhere I went, dinner parties, and people were obsessed with June Shine. Okay, so maybe you have seen June Shine around. It's in over 10,000 stores across the country, available at Whole Foods and Target, Ralph's, Vons, Albertsons, Kroger's, Wegmans, Total Wines, Bevmo, Safeway, and more. So you've probably seen it, but maybe you haven't tried it yet. So let me talk about it for a second. This is my favorite go-to adult beverage. Why? I love a cocktail. So I love a margarita, but they also have vodka sodas and rum cocktails. They make these taste amazing with no added sugar, unlike your traditional canned cocktails. Typically have like 20 grams of sugar or more. It's kind of crazy. All of their cocktails are super refreshing and light. It tastes great. and it's great for on the go. Their hard kombucha is also just chef's kiss. I am not drinking right now because I'm pregnant, but my husband has been loving these, and we've been having them on the roof when we have barbecues, when we have friends over. This watermelon raz flavor is insanely good. It's so sippable, delicious. They also have mango daydream. They have blood orange mint, which is just so good. The grapefruit paloma. The notes are just so spectacular. You're going to love it, but not overly sweet, which is so, so great. It's 6% alcohol by volume, which is a lower percentage, which just makes drinking it enjoyable. So they have hard kombucha. And as I said, they have cocktails in a can like the rum Mai Tai, which is so good, the tequila margarita, vodka soda, and the vodka mule. Mwah, so freaking good. So try out June Shine. So exciting for our listeners. We worked out a special offer just for you at any store. You can buy one June Shine package and get the second for only a penny. That's basically a $12 to $20 value. I recommend getting one of their best-selling variety packs. It's a great way to just try all of their flavors. Go to juneshine.com/almost30. Text them a photo of your receipt and they'll Venmo you immediately. It's that easy. So juneshine.com/almost30, JUNESHINE.com/almost30. You will text them a photo of your receipt and then they'll Venmo you immediately. It's that easy. So go to any store. You can buy one June Shine package and get the second for only a penny. Okay, I love that you're here. I love that you're here in New York, that I got you.
Me too.
Wait, I saw you on the Today Show.
Oh, thanks.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. It was one of the most nerve-wracking things. I literally was awake and every single hour the night before, because when I was already really exhausted.
Yes.
And then it's like my mind knew my body was so exhausted that I had this fear of missing my alarm. So every single hour I was up.
I know that feeling.
I know.
The worst.
It's like when you have an exam. That's what it took me back to.
Though it's like you can't fall asleep deeply enough to actually get
Yes.
rest. You're kind of like always a little bit awake.
Exactly.
So I'm curious because I want to hear about that experience, but what do you do? Like you're coming into a city that you don't have a home. It's not your home.
Mm-hmm.
You know the city. You kind of understand the energetics of the city, but how, before something big like that, are you grounding and like actually finding a little bit of peace? Because I feel like a lot of people are traveling a lot, maybe for work, maybe not. And they're not thinking about the energetics of the city and how they can kind of find like their center
Yeah, good question.
in it all.
I've learned to just do the minimal practices that I can, that I know help me in that moment. So I know going out for walks to like almost let my body, is it the word like accustomize or like become familiar with my surroundings? Again, why I like having windows and sunlight, places where I can really absorb in the environment that I am in. So definitely just getting outside. And, there's so many different practices like moon bathing and even like directly looking into sunlight when you get to a place. And, there's earthing where you just have your bare feet on the floor. One of those three.
Or on Canal Street.
Exactly. Like wherever it is. One of those, I definitely do one of those three things when I get to a place.
Yeah.
Just really like settling into the environment. It's also kind of just telling the environment that you're in, I'm here, and like letting your body really connect to that place. So I do that, but then I also have little things like the night before something like this. I know I want to. It's also just the little like self-care rituals. I do Abhyanga, which is one thing that is Abhyanga is a Sanskrit word for self-body massage. It's a really beautiful self-love practice, which is basically using oils or medicated oils to and by medicated, I mean with adaptogens, onto your body. And I particularly do the feet because that's where our nerves end. It actually like has access from your feet through the nerves throughout your entire body. And so even just by doing a little foot massage with oils, which also then lubricate your nerves and help to calm it and almost gives them a hug.
Yes.
That's a practice I love doing before I go to sleep. especially in a new environment or if I've got something big going on. And then also just eating foods. Like I always find when I go to a new place, I normally get really excited and I'm like, oh, I want to go eat this and I want to go eat a slice of pizza. But actually, like having foods specifically that ground you and earth you into your back into your body, and like foods that feel nourishing. Like anything nourishing makes your body feel so much more comforted and content in the space that you're in. So instead of reaching for like a pizza slice when you get somewhere, like maybe have something a little bit more nourishing for your mind and your body, because travel does a lot on your body as well that we don't really take into account.
Completely agree. The travel for me, some people thrive like going on planes and they really love the feeling. It's one of like the top 5 worst feelings I have, and I'm really trying to hack it. It's hard.
It is.
I think it's like the lack of oxygen. I think it's a lot of things.
so
It's the
much.
artificial light. But I think number 1 for me in that travel is what you mentioned, the nourishment.
Yes.
Because, it's our digestion, I feel like, slows down, or my anxiety maybe restricts. I don't know. But making sure that I'm like getting really healthy, clean foods, even though it might be a little boring and we're not taking part in like the buzz and what's happening, it makes a world of difference. What did you have like the morning of the Today Show? Because you have to get up so early.
I do. And honestly, I do intermittent fasting till like 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So my body is actually a lot better. Like I function, whether it's workouts or whether it's performing in some way, whether it's going into an exam, I generally function better on an empty stomach.
I'm the same.
But what you were saying about feeling a little bit more anxious and your digestion, that's actually fully true when you go up in the air in a plane. So in Ayurveda, it says that Vata energy, which is light, airy, and the energy in your body, which actually causes anxiety and creativity in the mind, but when imbalanced can create the erratic feeling of like anxiousness. That's actually completely elevated and exacerbated when you travel in an airplane or in anything fast moving. That mixed with the altitude, mixed with the false air that's being put into the airplanes.
EMFs.
Your digestion is slowed down completely, which is why a lot of people come off a plane and get constipated. And your anxiety and your kind of mind is heightened to, it's increasing air in your body, which increases that movement in your mind. And so all of that is so true. So that's why even on the plane, I have like a ritual of what I eat, what I don't eat, because I have to travel so much. I know what makes things a lot worse. They even say that your senses on your tongue become a little bit numb, and so even flight food ends up being saltier, and like you crave more salt, so you're eating a lot more crisps and like dried food and things to just stimulate your tongue more, because your tongue is actually like the stimuli on there are dampened. So much that happens. And I just think like this feeling of awareness, like what you said, this is what you've noticed, these things about your body, you've noticed that this is what happens. I think we become so mindless especially if you do it often, in the day-to-day activities. I'm like, when my friends land and they're like, I'm constipated, and then it stays for like 3 days, I'm like, that's not normal. You're not doing the things that you need to be doing. Like, it's not normal not to poop for 3 days. That's inside your body. It's actually getting like TMI.
No, but yeah,
it's true.
But I think a lot of people settle for certain feelings or conditions that kind of arise, whether it's after they travel or at certain times of the month, that are really pointing to an imbalance.
Yes.
And it upsets me when I hear about it, because I'm like, oh my God, you've been living with that.
I know.
And like being constipated, I feel like affects more than everything.
Migraines.
Yes.
Sluggishness, energy levels.
Yes.
And so I think it's all just about having that. It's hard to be mindful and conscious at every part of the day. Like it really is. But when you're noticing things happening repeatedly, that's probably a time to tune back in and say, hey, this has been happening to me over and over and over again. What are the things I can do, that I can adjust, that I can make minor changes to make less of an impact in this way? And I think, consciously living through things that we're repeatedly doing is so important.
How did you, I guess for people who are listening and they're like, so how do I connect with my body? How do I really get in tune? I feel like there might be a lot of people out there who hear a lot of people talk about being in tune with their body. And they're like, yeah, totally. Yeah. And they're like, how the hell? So how are we getting in tune with our bodies on both a physical,
Yes.
mental, and emotional level. Because I do think for me, it's like a lifelong practice, especially as bodies
Always.
change,
Always
as seasons
changing.
change.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I've been, thinking about it. And it's exactly what you said. It's something that never actually stops because your body is changing every second. Your mind and how you're growing is going to be deciding so many different things about you. And so actually it is a practice that isn't just let's figure this out now.
Yeah.
It's part of life and part of living to live optimally. And so the way that, like, physically, the way that I really try to connect to my body, um, I would say, yeah, physically, it's really listening to your body. Like, I think, and by that, I mean, when you're doing workouts, let's start with that.
Mm-hmm.
What feels like it's harming my body versus healing my body? Because actually, every single thing we are doing should be to heal. It may be that it, stretches your muscle and it contracts it so you get some sort of muscular pain, but it's, I feel like
The
you could
good.
tell the difference between the two.
Yes.
And a lot of the time we end up seeing what other people are doing. I personally have been going through this because I speak to some friends different friends have different body shapes. Like, everybody has a different body shape. And I'll be looking at someone who has a completely different structure to me. And I know that bodies have different structures. I've studied in Ayurveda, but still, your mind tricks you.
Mhm.
And so I'll be looking at someone who has a completely different frame to me. And they're like, oh, all I do is Pilates. I just do Pilates, and that's what's created muscle in my body, or that's how I've got tone. I'm like, oh my God, amazing. So I'm just going to do Pilates. And then I do Pilates, and I'm like, I haven't got the same results as this person.
Yeah.
Or then I hear another friend saying, oh my goodness, I'm weightlifting, and honestly, I don't even do cardio. I just weightlift. And then I'm like, oh, okay. So then I should just weightlift, and so many different things. So then my whole week ended up being weightlifting, Pilates in the evening, running on Wednesday, yoga on Thursday. Like, just
Yeah.
so spread out, where nothing actually ends up making a difference if you do it in that way, because you're not committing or being consistent with something. And so what I've learned now to do is, let me try something for a month. Like, just stick to one thing for a
Mhm.
month and have my body react, and let me listen to how my body feels, and physically, even how your body changes, and seeing your energy levels and all those things that you are looking for optimal health physically. Is this contributing towards that? And if it's not, then a month later you can change it. And when I was a dietitian, that's how I used to do a lot of like elimination diets. When I
Sure.
would have people come in and they would say, these things, I've got this. And I'd say, okay, fine, let's cut everything out and add things back in one at a time. And
Right.
so let's see how your body reacts to it. And so I would say, have an elimination diet, cut everything out that you're unsure about, and then start adding things in and see how your body's reacting to it. Sometimes we just have like a whole cocktail of things that we're doing, and we just don't know what's good and what's bad for us.
Sure.
And what's good for some people may not be good for you.
And that's why I think it's really hard with social media and just all of the information that we're fed on a daily basis or come across on a daily basis. That's why I love your approach of being more intuitive for you specifically and learning your own system and your own body. Because everyone is different, whether it's for food or working out,
Yes.
etc. But I mean, I find that people are hopping more on trends
Absolutely.
than actually listening to their body. I mean, when I was living in LA and I was teaching Soul Cycle, but then I was also, after my 3 Soul Cycle classes I would teach, I would go and teach, or I would go and take a berries class.
Yeah.
So constant HIIT, constant intense cardio on the body. But I'm like everyone's doing these workouts. So
Exactly.
I'm going to do these workouts. And I also saw other people with bodies that I wanted to emulate, just like you
Exactly.
said. And what happened was I completely burnt out
Burnt
my
out.
adrenals.
I was going to say, I've seen so much research that actually shows, and I started looking at it because of a few people in my life have polycystic ovary syndrome.
Yes.
And
So many people.
So many people. And when I was researching it, and I found that it actually says that when you do a lot of cardio or high intensity training actually increases your estrogen levels. And so for a lot of women, and I don't have PCOS, but I have higher estrogen levels. And so I was the person who I'm like, unless I'm sweating and nearly feeling sick, it's not a workout. And that's how I used to, I trained my mind to believe that unless I'm running and sweating and really or doing a Barry's workout or something where I almost am feeling physically sick, that's what a good workout is. Sure. And what I realized was I was doing way more damage to my body, even if I was getting more into the shape that I thought I wanted or into the structure that I thought I wanted. I was actually depleting myself so much more internally. Yeah. And so it's true actually and that's another thing you have to think about, like, what are my hormones telling me? What are my when I'm doing my bloods, what is it saying that I'm lacking or that I need? And so I think there's a lot of research that goes into tuning in as well. It's not just sitting there and thinking, what's my body feeling? Even though that's a really good way to do it emotionally and mentally. But physically, we also have to put in the experiments and the work and the research behind, the actual scientific information we have in front of us and reacting based off that.
Sure. Have you done any of
I've done everything.
Yeah. Tell me what you've done and what's been really helpful.
Yeah, I did a full blood work. And by that, I mean hormones, vitamins, minerals, and estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all of those levels. I did all of that. And then I also did a gut test. I've done gut tests quite often because, again, once you do one gut test, 6 months later, a year later, your gut changes based on your environment and what you've been through and the stress that you've been through. Sure. And so doing a gut test regularly will help you to understand what foods your body needs. Like, oh, I need more foods that have prebiotics. I need more foods that have been sprouted and have these vitamins and have these minerals. And so doing a gut test was really helpful. So full blood work, gut test, and then I also, this is not something everybody can do and to be accessible, but because I had it available to me, I got my brain scanned.
Cool.
And that was really interesting just to understand, like, there were lots of traits that I had that I would always put down to, like, kind of put myself down for. And it helped me understand my brain structurally. So one of the things he had told me was that a lot of the areas in my mind when he scanned it, they're lighting up at the same time. And usually what happens with people is it lights up in one area and then another area and then another area. And it actually helped other people also in my life understand why my brain goes from one thing to another so fast. And it's not that I'm not listening. It's that when someone says one thing to me, my brain's doing da-da-da-da-da, and suddenly I'm asking you something that's completely unrelated. So it makes someone feel like I'm not actually listening, but really I've done a whole
You connected the dots.
Yeah, in so many different ways. And suddenly I'm asking you a question about something that's completely irrelevant, but it's connected in my mind. So I've also learned to kind of understand my mind a bit better in that way. Wow. But structurally also kind of explain that for me. So full blood work, but the basics I would really recommend is full blood work and getting your digestion checked, because your digestion links to every other part of your body as well.
What was interesting about your digestion results, or at least one of them that surprised you?
I'm trying to think so for me, from the blood work, high estrogen surprised me, because and again, the things that you end up changing from that, by the way, are drinking water from plastic bottles. A huge thing that contributes to high.
I was just about to say, I was about to apologize for the plastic bottles. No, I told her, I was like, can you?
No, there's nothing here. No. They're glass. So that's a huge contributor. And again, heating food up in plastic, like plasticware, anything.
I've been a crazy person about that.
Me too. I've really changed that because, and I keep telling, one of my friends I watched a video of yours recently where you were talking about woo-woo mentality. Like, everyone's like, oh, this is woo-woo. And so I kept telling my friends, I was like, I'm telling you, you're drinking from plastic bottles every single day. That's all they had in their home. I was like, it's not good for you.
Leaching,
and they see me as that, like, the OTT extreme. Same. Everything is just like,
I'm that girl in every friend group.
And I'm like, okay, fine, don't listen. The guy goes to get his blood work done. He has high estrogen levels. And the first thing his doctor, a normal doctor, asked him was, do you drink from plastic bottles?
No way.
And he was like, Yeah. Next thing I go, they've got like just waters in their thing. I was like, what? And he told me, he was like, yeah, this is what the doctor told me. So it's like, again, these are all such subtle little
Yes.
changes that we're making, but that can make a huge difference. So the estrogen, and then in terms of digestion, what made a difference for me? So I'm like quite regular, and how you would expect you to be regular if you've got a good digestion.
Sure.
But one thing I did realize, or it made me more aware of, was the variety of like having more variety in your life changes helps create more variety in your microbiome. And so again, seasonally changing what you're eating based on the season, we get so used to having the same things throughout the year because it's all available to us, that we've kind of lost awareness of what maybe we need to be changing, and how impactful those changes are. So the different colored vegetables you're having in different seasons, the sprouted things that you're having, all of those things, the nuts and seeds that you're having at different times of the year. So I think actually tuning in to your environment, what's growing around you, what's available around you, and what should be or shouldn't be available to you at this time, whether it's summer, spring, winter, autumn, whatever it is, it actually helps to change the way that your gut will also react to the foods that you're eating. And so that was something amazing to me. So now I just have like a list of things throughout the year that I want to swap in or swap out for to increase my microbiome, which also strengthens your gut because it makes it kind of robust to whatever you're putting into it. And your gut is just, everyone, there's so much research to show the gut link to your mind, to your moods, to your hormones, to everything. A weak digestion depletes you.
And I think so many people I think now it's becoming more widely known, the connection. But I remember my mom has had gut issues for a long time. And I remember having a conversation with her, not to like teach her something, but it just kind of happened that it clicked for her that there were moments of anxiety, and anxious periods in her life where her digestion was slowed down. Also, what she was putting in her body was kind of a result of how anxious she felt. And so it was like so it's like this like loop.
Definitely.
And we have to be super aware of that. And I'm so glad that now in the mental health space, that's being talked about more. How we're nourishing our bodies and how that affects our brain.
What do you do physically in terms of to keep yourself in check and understanding your own body?
Yeah, I definitely have done on a regular basis. I do the blood tests, I do the hormone checks. During that period that I was doing a lot of HIIT workouts, and I was drinking quite like not quite a bit, but I was drinking more.
Yeah.
A lot more. And not nourishing my body in a way that it was intuitive. It was more so just getting food in my body to be able to work out like I was working out. And so once I got very real about that and saw the results, both how I was approaching my workouts was much slower, much more for healing rather than punishing my body. And now just to speak to the food piece of eating more locally and seasonally. I'm in New York. It's not the easiest thing to do, but God is good and he placed me next to an organic market.
Yes.
And I also have a harvest box that I'm subscribed to called Local Roots. Shout out. And it's great because they're sourcing from like the Hudson Valley, and every single week I get very local, very seasonal fruits, veggies, eggs, and things like that. So it's just a nice way also to like reconnect with the earth and just understand kind of what's happening on like a earth and soil level, because we're so disconnected. And I think Zach Bush talks about this a lot, but just that connection between our microbiomes and the soil. And how the soils are so depleted and so sterile now. And no wonder why our gut is, in the state that it is. So I think about that a lot.
I love that you said, and it just, sparked something that when you said it's difficult in New York to get it. And I think like this shouldn't be a scary thing for people to do. Sometimes you think it has to be all or nothing.
Right.
But like, even if you do a 10% change, like I'm gonna, even if it's a 70-30 split of I'm gonna have 30% of my food that's not seasonal, or depending on where you're at right now, if you're at 100% of eating foods which maybe aren't kind to your gut, even if you're changing it a 30% or a
Yes.
10%, like it doesn't have to be extreme changes. And I think like give yourself grace. It's all about the steps that you're taking. It's not about having that drastic change. So it doesn't matter if someone's at 100%, do your 10% and see the difference that it makes.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think people get overwhelmed.
It is overwhelming because you see everybody showing up online as their best selves. And it's like, oh, this is the organic veg that I've bought, but we're not seeing all the other stuff maybe that,
Sure.
that we've, and I'm a culprit of that too. You want to show up as the best version of yourself, but also know that everybody has a version of themselves that they are changing and adapting and working on. And you may not see that part. So you need to think about what your percentages are and where you want to meet yourself.
And that 10% can make such a difference. I'm thinking
Huge.
about my husband, like, and I think just by proxy, I try not to like preach, but just like being in each other's, existence. He's trying an athletic greens. He's having electrolytes in his water,
Yeah.
And it's become, not only, I'm sure it makes him feel good, but there's something about knowing that you've incorporated a healthy routine into your life that I think for him, like I just noticed, like there's just like, I'm doing this for myself. Yeah.
It's like a confidence in yourself. I think, when you're, it's like in a relationship, when you're treating someone kindly and with thought and with care and with respect and giving them what they need, they flourish. And in the same way, when you're giving your body what it needs to feel loved, to feel cared for, to feel nourished, you feel confident and you feel there's a different type of, I know when I'm doing the practices, when I'm waking up and I'm doing my meditation and I'm getting my workout or movement in and I'm eating the right foods and I'm, working at the pace that my body needs versus what my mind thinks I need to be at. Oh my goodness, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, God, that was a productive day. I feel so good.
Yes.
And it's not even drastic, amazing things that I've done. It's just sticking to the few things in my life that I know fuel me so deeply. And so actually that becomes your kind of rating of success at the end of the day. Like sometimes I would get to the end of the day and I'd be like, God, I didn't even make it through this. I didn't even get my meditation done in the morning. I didn't do this. And a lot of the things that I was actually thinking about when I got to the end of the day weren't related to productivity of my goals. It was linked to the things that I know I needed and I didn't do, that I disappointed myself with. And so, I think that's so important.
And that really comes with, knowing yourself well enough to know what puts you specifically into the state that you desire, whether it's a more peaceful state, a calm state, a more focused state. And I find that, there was a period in which I was kind of forcing parts of my morning routine where I'm like, you only meditated for 5 minutes? Like you're supposed to do like 10 or 15, like, just pieces that I was being a little judgy and perfectionist about. And I realized that, being in tune for me really means checking in. Maybe it's not even a seated meditation. Maybe it's a walking meditation that goes right into maybe some computer work before I have like a nice leisurely lunch with a friend. Like just understanding the aspects of that routine that actually just make me feel like more grounded in my body, accomplished if that's something I want to feel. And it kind of changes on a daily basis.
Totally. We like, and I think about that all the time because I feel like I was basing everything that my wants, my needs, who I was on someone that I was like 5 years ago, 7 years ago. All the things that people because they haven't seen the changes maybe that I've been going through, I kept reverting back to this version of myself that made other people feel comfortable, that made other people feel like that the version that I thought that they preferred of me. And I realized I was doing such an injustice to myself because I am changing and the things that I like have changed and the groups that I want to be around have changed. There's so much that changes within us and then shows up externally. And if we only harbor it inside and we don't allow it to be expressed and allow our changes to blossom and actually show, it's a part of us that we're just hiding. And so whether it is some, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes to other people they may think you've changed for the worse, you've changed for the better, but either way, hiding anything inside of you that you are, it makes, that's also another root cause of disease in the body. When you end up feeling ashamed of yourself, or you end up feeling like you're hiding parts of yourself that other people may not agree with or condone, whatever it is that they may not like about you, you're almost shaming yourself because you're not ready to show up as whoever you are. And I was been thinking about this so much lately, that like every single person has weeds. We all have weeds. But for some reason, when we look at other people's weeds in them, if we don't recognize them, or they're not familiar to us, or we haven't got them ourselves, or we don't recognize them in ourselves, we end up judging them, or we end up thinking that they're far worse. But the point is, everybody's got weeds. It's just that we have different ones. And so we judge people based on things that are unfamiliar to us, or things that we don't recognize, without realizing that actually it's just something else. It's just another species of weed. Just like I've got them, they've got them.
That makes up their garden.
Exactly. That makes up their garden. And we're all just trying our, like everyone's just trying their best in that way.
Okay, I have become obsessed and so happy that I have been tracking my metabolic health using a continuous glucose monitor. I saw a lot of people on social media starting to do this, and I was really curious, but I was kind of overwhelmed with the options and how to do this and would I like it. And when I found Levels, I was like, okay, this is my perfect fit. Monitoring my glucose is now one of the most important things I do to maintain my peak vitality. And what I'm learning is my peak longevity as well. So it's really, really easy. So I attached the glucose monitor to my upper arm. It was easy and painless. And then I am tracking my glucose in the app. The app is incredibly easy to use. It's informational. I learn so much. For example, the other day I'm getting at the end of pregnancy, I'm getting my date intake every single day. This is something that they recommend doing to just like soften your cervix, etc. And I realized like, oh, wow, okay, this is like such a glucose spike when I eat these dates. Obviously, it's natural sugars. But what I started doing and noticing that it would help reduce the glucose spike was dipping it in a load of peanut butter, which was so cool to see it actually work. And I noticed a difference afterwards where I wouldn't have this like crash after my sugar high. It would be more maintained energy, and I just felt more satiated. So I learned that through my monitor. And then also another hack that I discovered that was so helpful was after dinner. I'm having dinner earlier now, probably around 5:36. So after dinner, I'll take a short walk, and I love dinner. So I have like a nice hearty dinner. And what the walk does is blunt the spike by disposing of the glucose to the major muscle groups as I am walking. So it's so fascinating. I am feeling better than ever. What's also fascinating is that we all respond differently, even to the same food. So for example, one type of carbohydrate, whether it's fruit or rice or sweet potato, that your body might process well, my body might not. This is why personal data is so important. So the app itself is amazing. It interprets your glucose data and provides a simple score after you eat a meal so you can see how different foods affect you and develop a personalized diet that's right for you. And I love it because you can see like real time. It's a very powerful way to change your behavior if you're someone who maybe is first thing in the morning having something like super sweet and wondering why you are so tired mid-morning. It is absolutely going to change your behavior. So right now, Levels is offering our listeners a special offer. So when you use the link levels.link/almost30, levels, levels.link/almost30, you will receive a special offer. So check that out. I am a believer. I am a user. I am totally seeing my health in a different light and able to really optimize in a way that I haven't been able to before. So thank you, Levels. Love you. Again, the link is levels.link/almost30 for a special offer just for you. I'm so glad you brought up just this piece about changing. And I definitely relate to that feeling of just feeling like the quote new version of me, maybe in this season, might be uncomfortable for other people that are
Yes.
close to me. It basically like, because you're a part of a system, whether it's your friend group or whether it's your family or whether it's your work culture, it's like you're a part of that system. And so any shift or change affects the system.
Yes.
And I am someone who definitely likes to make other people feel comfortable. I like to
Same.
be liked, you know,
Same.
and I just, I still deal with that, but I think I've gotten a lot better. But I would love to hear kind of how you've been able to both nurture the change happening within you, and maybe that's done more privately, but then also really kind of reacclimate to the world, to your community, to your family and friends in a way that does not abandon who you've become.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I feel like I'm working through that now in my life. Like there's so many versions of. I'm a people pleaser. I have been
Yeah, same.
since I can remember, and I can totally relate to you when you're saying that. You know the shift that you make. I loved how you said actually the shift that you make. Just you're part of all these circles, and that shift. It's almost like an earthquake where something moves out of place, and it shakes up everybody around you in a subtle or gross way. And I'd say like I'll share a shift that I feel I've made, which is I always choose to show up for other people in a joyful way, and I think both can exist. You can feel sad but still feel joy. You
Yes.
can be sad about a certain situation but still show up to your friends and give good energy. You can show up online and give good energy even if you have going through a tough time in your relationship or in your family, or if you've got hard things going on. I think the hard thing I found is people think you're being fake or being a false version of yourself and don't realize duplicity exists.
Yes.
And that I found I've struggled with that because I choose to be the personality that I am when I show up online purely because I believe that I have been blessed with a community that I'm close to where I can deal with a lot of the things that I go through. And so what do I choose to give out to 2 million people? Has to be thought about. Like, do I want to share my pains to that many people?
Yes.
Not saying that it reaches that many people, but like on my community online, that do I want to give that out and have that ripple effect of energy where I've just shared pain. It's going to cause a lot of other people probably sadness and pain. That's then going to ripple in some way to other people. So, or do I tell a select few people that are in my life that I know are able to handle it and are able to hold space for me, and then use whatever other energy I've got to show up online as that other part of me that wants to be more energetic and wants to be positive and wants to embrace life in this way. And so I think for me, when one thing I'm doing, and I'm starting a podcast,
Can't wait.
and the podcast is a little bit like quite different to my Instagram in the way that I don't want to be seen as the person, and I understand that's the person I choose to be online, but everyone's like, oh, you're always so happy all the time, or you're always so positive all the time. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And that is the version of me that I may share online for other people, but I also share a lot of other things. But the version that's seen of me or that is perceived as like, oh, you must not have any problems. You're so happy all the time, or you're so this. And so the podcast is really gonna, like, for me, is gonna be a place where I can share this new version of myself that may make people feel very uncomfortable, but it is a version of me where I feel now I'm ready to accept and share, okay, the ups and downs, which are reality. And again, not in a way that I'm dragging people down, but in a way that just let's go through the motions like together, and let's really dive as deep as we need to get to then rise back up again. I think it's also selecting the people that you choose to share change with. I don't think everything has to be shared with everyone. I don't have a best friend that I share everything with. I have select people that I go to share certain things with. And I think there's a false thing of, I mean, I'm sure some people have that, someone that they tell everything to. But I know in my life have a few people in my life where if I want to talk about relationships, maybe I'll go to this person. If I want to pour my heart out, I'll call my mum. If I want to talk about, my book or whatever, I'll call my sister because she's so good at the way, there's so many different people that you can turn to for different things. And so in the same way, like there are certain things that I'm changing, which sometimes my mum can't understand. And, I've tried to explain certain things to her of how I would choose to live my life, or, for example, having children. Like, it's not that I don't want to have children. I love children and I definitely anticipate having them if God willing. But there's especially in my community, when you get over your 30s, it's like you're an old woman. And I find, and my mum is not pressuring me in that way at all, but helping her to understand these changes. Because when I was younger, I would say, oh, I want to be married and have kids and everything by the age of 25. Like that's same. Because that's what I was like seeing. That's what I had seen and so people think now that I don't have kids at the age of 32 that I've decided not to have kids ever. I'm like, that's an assumption. And also, even if that was the case, allow me to have that space to change. That's just one topic, but so many different ways that I feel my mindset has shifted. And again, that to some people who think, how could you have a life without kids, would be like, that's a horrible change that you've made. Like, how could you even think that way? What happened? And it's like, no, it's so many of my friends are choosing that route, and it's a shift that people feel very uncomfortable with because culturally it's not something normal, but it's something which, there's so many different, of course I've thought about, what happens if I don't have kids? What happens if I do have kids? It's not a wrong thing to even have, and I feel like it's even talking about this, people are like, oh wow, she's thinking about not having kids.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
We feel the eyes and the ears. We're like,
I can feel it. I'm like, I'm suffocating. But I feel like those are things that I just want to say out loud because they're thoughts that I am having.
Yes. And we should be allowed, like,
we should be able to.
I love this conversation because
and there's me sinking into my seat.
Yeah.
And I don't.
I just feel, I think having a public facing persona, which is a real part of you, it's a tricky thing because I think people become so, I wouldn't say obsessed, maybe in some cases, but just they become so used to you as that certain identity in that season at which they found you, followed you, met you. And then there are changes that happen, and it's as if their own identity is changing because they see you change. And I've had to really realize that it's not my responsibility or my business. And also, if I'm not changing because I'm afraid of what my audience will think or what my friends will think or what my family will think, I'm actually not supporting their greatest and highest good and their own growth. I think that piece kind of helped me the most.
Yes.
Because I realized in doing that, I was keeping people where they are, which might not be where they should be forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, on all accounts, I completely agree. And I did want to talk about just having the friend or friends that you know you're going to go to. I think that's a really important piece that people might not think about, because I know that for maybe one or two friends, I am their only.
Yes.
And I feel
agrees.
I feel honored and I feel a burden. Do you know what I mean? It's like I then become the therapist, I then become the friend, I then become so many things that I don't even think I'm equipped to be and really should be. And so I think that's a really important point for people to think about and give their self permission to do. Why people wouldn't do that, I would assume, and I've been there before, where I don't want my best friend to think that I'm not telling them everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of that high school mentality that we have to remind ourselves that we're adults.
I know, exactly. And whatever that means. And I think it's and I can completely relate to what you're saying. I think two things that I was thinking about while you were speaking is being someone that's in the public eye. I also constantly remind myself that I'm choosing this.
Yes.
And this is completely a personal choice. I could shut everything down if I wanted to. And
Mhm.
I think it's really easy when, and I agree. I feel both sides. I feel like it's my choice that I'm choosing to show up in this way and do this. And there's a part of me that obviously thrives off it and loves it and wants to have a community and also wants to share. Like sometimes, I think about what I'm doing and I'm like, oh, I wonder why I've taken that selfie and I want to post it. Or I wonder why I'm doing, sometimes
Yeah.
I see myself on an outer body way and I'm like, oh, like I'm choosing to do I'm choosing to show where I'm eating. I'm choosing to show what workouts I'm doing. I'm choosing to show myself in this
Yeah.
way. And so I think everything comes with this duality. And I think that's the word of like today. Everything comes with duality
Yes.
where you can love something and there will also be the other side of it. There's always a balance of like this goodness that comes from something and the parts that you have to deal with if you want to be in this way. And so I agree with I see what you're saying, but I also have realized to take that responsibility onto myself where I'm like,
Mhm.
this is all a choice.
Mhm.
And at the same time, how to show up as your authentic self and then not be scared to do that. And I get messages sometimes where I'm like, oh, I used to see such sparkle in your, now I see sadness in your eyes or something like that. Or I'll see randomly, like maybe that I got messages like that like a year ago.
Yeah.
I was like, actually, yeah, I was going through a hard time then. And I was trying to show up as a certain version, but I was struggling to be there. And so when I get messages like that, I know that it's almost like a little bit of truth when it irks me.
Sure.
Or when I feel like writing those messages, I'm like, well, actually, I was crying an hour earlier. That's why I've got bags under my eyes. That's why my eyes look heavy. But it also I've just realized like everything is so temporary. We think it's not. We think everything is permanent. And whenever we get messages or whenever, people say things online and whatever, it feels so permanent at the time. It feels so heavy at the
personal.
time and so personal. And I've thought about this when it comes to photo shoots that I haven't been able to control what images come out or podcasts sometimes where you say things and do I want to delete it? No, not really. It's something I said and it just is what it is. So many things that we feel are so serious and so permanent, but actually everything is so temporary. And so I've learned to go through those motions in that way where I'm like, this feels really crappy right now, but it is just temporary.
Yes.
And the permanence that I'm feeling is just an emotion that I'm holding on to versus the reality of it. And yeah, I was actually reading a quote this morning about emotions, and I'm sure you read it, but like emotions are energy in motion. And so again, when you're keeping something captive inside of you, in Ayurveda it says that it is the root of disease in the body. Like keeping emotion, hiding parts of yourself and having pieces of you that are not shared and are not accepted. When you're hiding something, it means you're not accepting it about yourself. And when you're not accepting things about yourself, it creates this, not even darkness, I wouldn't even say that, it creates this this anxiety that is unnecessary in you.
Yes.
And so again, I'm sharing this because I feel like I'm going through different versions of that in my life with different people in my life of, oh, do you think if I tell them this, it's going to make them think I'm not as spiritual anymore or not as this anymore? All these labels that I'm internalizing that I think people have given me, or I'm not as happy anymore, I'm not as joyful anymore, whatever it is that people have said I am. I'm like, I need to strip all of that back and just like figure out who am I versus who everyone's telling me I am. And that can be really scary and that can be so difficult.
There's so many things I want to pick apart, but the piece about, hold on, come back.
While you're saying that, don't you think that she has one of the most soothing voices that you've heard in your whole life? Like, I need a meditation with your voice. You are like one of the calmest humans. I just love talking to you, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
You're so thoughtful in so many different ways, but also your just presence is so grounding.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same about you.
Thank you.
I was very much
I feel extremely erratic in my mind, but honestly.
Oh, no. Oh, it's so fun. It's so funny how maybe that's a piece that I wanted to say because it was connected to, being really more consumed with how people perceive you. And how that is, I've realized in my life where I'm thinking about, okay, what's Krista going to think if I say this or do this or want to do this? Or how will my husband feel if I say this? Or share that this is on my
Yes.
heart. And oftentimes it's connected to a piece of me that feels that way.
I know.
It's really like,
I
yes,
know.
maybe they will. I don't know, but it's really not
It's
of
really
my
a
concern. It's
self-judgment.
really, there's something in there. So I've been looking at that a lot recently where I'm like, what part of me believes this?
Mm-hmm.
And what part of me just chooses to stay more comfortable, and kind of where I've been, and why. It's not necessarily bad, but I'm like, oh, why?
Understanding why, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're both going through similar
Mhm.
emotions, but yeah,
Mhm.
I can completely relate. I'm like, wait, why am I building up this imaginary way that I think someone's gonna react before I've even expressed? And
Yes.
I'm sure it comes from like a deeper thing of like, there's stuff that you've gone through in your childhood, or experiences, even small experiences that you've had where you've been shut down in some way, or you haven't been able to share, or when you have shared it's been shut down. There's so many different things that it can relate to. But and again, I go back to people pleasing. I'm like, just in case it makes them like me a little bit less, let me just not,
Yeah.
and I think it's just the confidence that you have. Like, I'm learning to how to be confident. I have this terrible habit of like, if I'm around people who know me really well, and there's people that are asking me questions about myself,
Mm.
it's just, I'm trying to stop doing it, but I will, before I answer,
I know
I'll
what
look
you
to
mean.
them. And I'm like, why am I like, if Jay's there, if my mum's there, if my sister's there, if anybody that I feel knows me well is around me,
Mm.
I almost give up. I literally, like, it's like I'm like, you do like it, I don't know how to explain it, but
I
it's
know
almost like
exactly. I do
I
the same thing.
really, I surrender my abilities or confidence
Mm.
to everybody around me.
And
I
it's also thinking about what they experience of
of
you, of
you.
that question.
Yes. And but also like it's like I lose confidence or understanding of myself and believe everybody
Interesting.
else knows me more because I've taken in that for so long. So I do it, and I do all the time. I'm like, yeah, it was, even if they're asking me, so, what do you do? And I'll be like, oh, you explain it better. So honestly, it's become such a natural tendency of mine to give away my power or give away my, like, I don't know even know how to explain it, but it's almost like every time there are people who've made decisions for me in my life or helped me through it, I'll just be like, oh, they're better at it than me.
Mm.
So let me relinquish that power to somebody else. And it is I've been observing myself because I saw someone else do it. And it's someone that I see a lot of characteristics. And I watched it. We were in a circle and we were giving examples like, what are 3 things that you really like about yourself? And I remember being like, oh my God, I do not want to answer this question. I do not want to answer this question. I can't think of anything. I don't know. If I say something, it will make me sound big-headed. But then if I say I don't know, it will make me sound like I don't like myself. Like, all these thoughts going through my head while everyone was making their way through the
Yeah.
circle. And it got to me and I was like, what do you think? Do you think it's I was like, oh my gosh. And it's just, yeah, we give away our power so easily. And it's when you don't feel confident in your own understanding of yourself. I've put it down to that because whenever I've been in a place where I feel quite aligned and I feel like I understand what's going on, I'm quite honest with who I am. I'm doing the things that I need in my life. I have a different level of confidence.
Yes.
But when I feel a little bit lost in any of those areas, and each time, like, even if it's in one area, it kind of seeps into other areas as well. Like, if you feel a little bit uncertain in your professional life, you can get triggered in your personal life from whatever it is affecting you there. So actually, you have to think about all the different areas because, like you said, with the friend circle thing, everything connects.
Everything.
And so if you're feeling uncomfortable in your professional life and you're feeling like sadness or anxiety there, it kind of pours down into so many different parts of you that you don't even realize.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I've noticed that so much about myself lately, and I'm trying to keep your head straight. Don't look to the side.
I relate so much. Oftentimes, and Krista knows this, so it's not a surprise, but oftentimes when we're in like a trio setting and it's she and I and someone that we're interviewing, it's very difficult for me.
Yeah, I'm the same with Jay.
And it was actually really hard to express that to her because it has nothing to do with her.
No.
But I was thinking about, and we kind of touched on this before we started recording, this idea of like the leakiness, like where I feel like I haven't done a great job of really just like patching up the parts of me that can sometimes feel a little insecure, or maybe I'm picking up on someone else's energy and I'm thinking more and feeling more of that rather than my own.
Yes.
And it becomes really confusing.
Yes.
And I just lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I lose the creative thought, I lose the presence. And oftentimes in conversations where she's with me, I won't have a damn question to ask. And I'm like,
Yes.
what do you mean?
Yes.
It's intuitive. Just go. And it's like blank.
I know.
And it's the anxiety.
And I feel that too. When I go on interviews with Jay,
Yeah.
I feel like and not because of him. He's one of the people that has really helped me. And I'm like, so what should I do? He's like, no, you have to, I will help you, but you need to think about this yourself. And I've had a tendency with my family, like if anything was happening, my mom would patch up, my sister would help me. I didn't finish my coursework when I was younger, my sister would finish it for me. Like I always kind of had people who patched things up for me.
Sure.
Or filled in the blanks without me having to do the work to do it. And so Jay was one of the people who really helped me to kind of find my own voice. And so whenever I will look to him, I'm like, no, you tell it. He's like, no, you tell it. I'm like, no. You say it so much better. No, you tell it. And I'm like, oh God. But it's that feeling of it's also being around people who actually have that.
Yeah.
And so for him, I feel like he really has this, he's really good at understanding what he wants, vocalizing it, being very confident, which again, for people who are like that can come across cocky sometimes. And I don't feel that way at all. But when I see it from an outside perspective, I'm like, wow, his confidence can be really scary and intimidating for lots of people. Not because he is confident in the wrong way, because we're not used to seeing people who exude that confidence.
Yes.
Who really know who they are.
Yes.
And so that's
confronting to people.
It is confronting.
Yeah.
And and me as his partner, I can say that I understand that. Not that I found it confronting, but that I'm ready to give up my power, because I'm like, no, he does everything better. And he's so much more confident in this. And the way that he expresses himself is so much more articulate and whatever it is. And I'm like, oh, well, what's the point of me even saying it? Like you say it. And I feel the same way in interviews as well. Like when we're doing things together, I'd say I become a different version of myself. Not a different version, but like a timid version of myself.
Sure.
But again, I'd be the same way if it was my mom or like anybody that I feel has that in them. And so yeah, it's just life. Life's so interesting.
And it's so interesting to observe, because I relate down to every detail. I really relate. And I was beating myself up about it for so long. I'm like, why can't you just get better? And why aren't you as articulate or as clear or as grounded in these moments? Like, what's wrong?
Yes.
And I think we all have those aspects of ourselves that we're like, ugh.
I know.
And, I think I've learned that when I have that feeling, I'm no longer feeling shame around it, which has taken a very long time.
Yes.
It's almost as if I have to understand why she is the way she is.
Yes.
And begin to almost like a loving friend or parent, just be like, what's actually going on here?
And like build your own confidence, like
yes.
with them. Can I just say you're so articulate and so clear?
Oh, thank you.
Genuinely.
Thank you.
I
feel the same way about you. See this?
Yeah. That's what I mean. But we have to do that for ourselves, right? That's what's hard. It's so, and I think even when I was saying about the 3 things that you like about yourself, like I think we're in a weird society sometimes where when you are too confident, or you actually are in alignment and you feel really good about yourself, sharing that feels scary. Yes. But then when you're down and out, that feels scary too. And I'm like, so it's hard to know, do I like, oh, I'm feeling really good about myself, even if you're feeling good about yourself physically, or, you're like feeling good about yourself spiritually. It's either intimidating or it irks something in someone else. I'll give like an example of that is I haven't drunk my whole life. I don't drink alcohol. And so I remember at university or college when I would not be drinking, not that I ever thought it was a bad thing for anybody else, but when everybody doesn't feel like you're all on the same page, it kind of irks something in the other people where they're like, no, this isn't right. Like you're throwing off the dynamic, and it makes them feel bad about their decision, which isn't a bad decision anyway.
Right.
But because you aren't doing something or you're changing the dynamic a bit, it makes, so even if I'm confident in that decision, it makes them feel unconfident
Yes.
in their decision. And so there is this tricky thing of like, again, being a J who's extremely confident, but has done the work to be so, and has done the work to be aligned, and showing up in that way. And then also being the people who are a little bit like insecure. And again, that's not seen as a great thing. So it's a little bit difficult when you're shifting between
Yes.
these dynamics of, okay, but what does it mean to show up confidently and charismatically? Like, why is that seen as such a bad thing? If someone does know these 3 things that they love about themselves in a circle, people are like, oh, she's a bit bold, isn't she? You know, like she's really confident. And sometimes that's seen to be a really like bad thing as well. And so it's I guess you know, when you boil it all down, it's down to intention. How am I sharing this? With what intention? Am I sharing it to be cocky and confident, or am I sharing it because it's something I truly feel on the inside?
Yes.
And I do think people feel feelings.
I was gonna
Like
say
they feel that
it's
feel
felt.
that deeply.
It's absolutely felt. And I think that's why I think, you know, as you know, anytime I say the word energy, I'm like that judgment where I'm like, okay, the woo woo, but
energy.
there's something to, because we all feel energy.
Yeah,
and we can
really
all
do.
we can all think about moments where we walk into a room and we just kind of feel a type of way, or we meet someone, we're like, oh, either that feels really good and like warm, or it's like
a little bit off.
Something's off, right? And so that's energy. And so I've learned too that the parts of me that I really love, or the moments where I feel really good, oftentimes I can be a little orchestrator of the energy if I'm owning it in a way that is like super grounded. And then the people who are in proximity receive it in a way that is less like, oh, they're forcing it. They're just, it's an observation of someone in their natural state.
Yeah.
Because I do have moments where I'm feeling so good. I'm like, this is my natural state.
Yes. Yes, completely.
You know, and it's felt, and you can't really describe it.
And it does kind of it disarms people as well. I've noticed that like when people come in with their like being really authentic, it disarms me of my the barriers that I've put up, or the persona that I think I'm coming into this event with, or whatever it is. It's like, and then you see someone that's really in their space and really owning it, and you're like, oh wow, like they're giving me permission to do the same thing. And I felt that energy when I felt that way going into an event where I felt lots of barriers up, and I'm like choosing to just be and not show up as anything else, not pretend like I'm more intelligent than I am, not pretending like I'm more well versed in whatever, you know, we're all talking about, but just showing up as me disarms everybody else around you. It's like, oh, like I find that a lot with even like makeup. It's such an interesting thing. Like I don't wear a lot of makeup, or sometimes don't. And yesterday I went on the Today Show, and she was so sweet. And then he said, oh my gosh, you're not wearing any makeup, are you? This other lady that was on the show. And I said, no. And at first she was like, oh wow, like that's really brave. And I was like, at first I was like, oh my God, do I look like, in my mind I was like, I can't tell, is that something good or is it something bad? I can't tell. But I realized like it was actually a really sweet thing she was saying, because she was like, it's so nice. She was like, I've stopped doing that too now. Actually, I don't like wearing so much foundation. It kind of, it allows people to, I know I do that in my authentic self, because I know how I feel when I put on makeup. It makes me feel like a different version of myself.
Yes.
And so for me, showing up in that way, it took me a second to feel comfortable with it. But now that I do, every time I come back and I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't like put all of that on. I'm so glad I didn't be that way, because it doesn't make me feel confident. But in the same way, some people put on makeup and they feel so confident
Exactly.
in it. And that's their authentic version.
Yes.
And so I do think when you do show up in that way, it definitely disarms people to just be as you are.
I agree, which I think is such a gift. You know,
Yeah.
we forget that like us being ourselves can be such a gift for people, whether it's like right in that moment or like a little ways down the line.
It was about 4 years ago that I started to take Seed. The DSO1 Daily Symbiotic has been a part of my routine for a while now, and I literally tell anyone and everyone who's willing to listen that they should try Seed for improved gut health. And we know by now, I would think, because all y'all are on the internet, on social media, I feel like it is a topic of conversation that the health of our gut is linked to so much more than just our digestion. It is linked to our mental health, our immune health, and more. Seed is committed to scientific integrity and transparency. You can go on their website and learn so much. They develop scientifically validated, clinically studied next generation probiotics for people and the planet. Their first product for humans, the DS-01 Daily Symbiotic that I mentioned, is literally the only probiotic I trust and take. Anyone else take probiotics and being like, is this working? Like, what's happening? There's a difference between the seed capsule and other capsules. What is the difference? It's designed to survive your stomach acid, bile salts, and digestive enzymes. Seed is so different. It literally survives your GI tract, which most don't. Okay, so this is really, really important in the process. Okay, it has to get to where it's going in order to work. So I love that about seed. I've just noticed an improvement in my digestion, my energy. Y'all, I have been in good health for quite some time, and I know that maintaining a healthy gut has been a part of that strong immune system. If you don't believe me, check out any of your other favorite people on social media because so many people are talking about seed. It works. It truly, truly works. So for our listeners, I'm excited for you because you get a special offer. So if you want to cut through the gut health noise, like all the other things out there, and really get to the product that is going to work, visit seed.com/almost30 and use the code almost30 to redeem 30% off your first month of Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic. That's seed.com/almost30 and use the code almost30, seed.com/almost30. Use the code almost30 for 30% off your first month of Seed's DS-01 Daily Symbiotic.
I wanted to round out just by talking about the pod.
Yay!
So I loved what you said about it being, another way to express yourself on a deeper level. And that's why I love podcasting because of its long form nature.
Yeah.
But there's also something to, just being able to have a conversation where you can actually drop in, not that being online and what you share online or what we share online is not dropping in, but there's a different quality to it. So I would love to know more, whatever you can share.
Yeah, I think I've had this craving to share on a longer form. And again, it's because I feel you get a little snippet on Instagram Reels. You're limited with the time that you can share. But also, I mean, honestly, exactly what this is, just having conversations that feel so like I had no idea what I was coming on here to say.
Same.
And exactly. And but to do this with someone, with other people or friends or people that you connect to. And honestly, things that came out of me even today were things that I didn't even know I thought about or that I had in me or I hadn't thought about deeply enough. And it really brought that out for me. So whenever I've gone on other people's podcasts, I've noticed that I really somehow being in conversation, it actually allows me to grow so much through the conversation and to notice things about myself through the conversation. I was on Jay's podcast recently and I was in absolute tears and I shared with him something that I hadn't even told him about our relationship. And I was like, oh my God, like it's so weird that it came out in this way. And it was about sharing things and how I don't sometimes know what's even out there about me because he shares so much on his podcast. I don't get asked or don't get told about it. It just is. So I get people coming up to me like, oh yeah, I know that you don't like this. And I'm like, God, how do they know that? I haven't chosen to share that. So anyway, it was off that topic just to give context. And it came out in that and he was like, I didn't even know you feel that way. I was like, I don't think I even knew I felt that way until we spoke about it. And so it's just made me realize that I really enjoy conversations so deeply. I really enjoy having these meaningful exchanges with friends. And I think it deepens connections. Like I feel like I know you so much better through doing this and have learned so much about you. And again, it's disarming. Like you sharing your heart and me sharing my heart. And it kind of allows us to connect in a completely different way if we had done it on an Instagram reel or done it at an event or, something like that. It's just so different. So anyway, it's just my little way of sharing this with other people. And I just think there's never too much, there's so much about, there's just everyone's saying the same thing and everything that, people are doing. It's another podcast, but I just think, why not? Because there may be a few people that you reach that haven't listened to other people's. There may be a few people you reach that really needed this specific message. And it's about that. Like, it's literally just about that. So I'm very excited.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited. And yeah, I agree. It's really important that people don't stop from creating things or expressing themselves in specific ways, even if it feels like
Already
saturated,
done.
already
Yes.
done, because there's a reason why you're being called. And there's also very specific people who are needing
Yeah.
your frequency, your message, the type of content that you're going to be putting out. So
And we need it.
yes,
Like, there are different ways
yes,
people express themselves, and
I agree.
this is a form of that. And so actually, I know I need it for my growth too.
Yes.
Um,
And then the
just-
book. We
Oh,
have a
the book.
cookbook
Yes,
coming
I have a
out.
cookbook coming out in spring 2024.
Great.
And it's all about everything from morning to evening of healthcare rituals, how, like, basically the ideal situation of taking you through, helping you connect to yourself, but also helping you connect to your food and the spices, and understanding how spices can be your first line medication before anything else. And I've learned that from such a young age, being Indian and having these spices in my life. And I really do use them as a tool and a vessel to heal my body.
Yeah.
And how it can help with just creating amazing plant-based food and making it taste incredible, to all the rituals in between, like why eating with your hands is so important, why eating seasonally is so important, why connecting to your food when you're making it and setting an intention with it is so important. So it has everything in between, everything that's in my mind I've poured into this book. And I am honestly, I just yesterday finished reading it through for the second time after the edits, and I was really happy reading through it. And it's very difficult for me because I don't complete things very often. I find
I'm
it
the
hard
same
to
way.
do that. And so to read through something like that, and I was like, oh my God,
That's
I
pretty
did
major.
this. I did
That's
this.
pretty major.
So
Wow.
yeah, excited to share all of it.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
You are
here.
just so lovely.
No,
and thank you so
adore you.
much. I had this was such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. No, I'm so thankful.
Me too.
Sometimes I go into conversations and I think what we were talking about, kind of that like very subtle anxiety of, I hope that there's that, just that ability to drop in and just kind of be ourselves and flow and not have it feel like question 1, question 2.
No, you really,
so I appreciate you.
You
for
really are able to harness
flow
that
in.
energy on this. So I really appreciate that.
Can't wait for the pod. I
Thanks.
adore you.
Thanks.
Thanks guys for listening. We'll see ya.
Thank you so much, Radhi. We love you. And again, you can listen to more episodes with us and Radhi by searching Radhi Almost 30 or Jay Almost 30 to find the episodes with her and her husband. It was such a pleasure to have you on Almost 30 podcast.
And thank you to our sponsors for this episode, bringing you brands we love and actually use. You can find all of our mega discounts in our show notes, as well as on almost30.com. To learn more about Almost 30, how to get more involved, be in community with us, please go to almost30.com. We have incredible courses and programs like the Life Edit and the Sacredness of Being Single, and the Invitation, which is a breakup series for friendships and romantic relationships and more. And we also have our Almost 30 membership, which is a place where you can feel incredibly supported in community on your path of growth. And we're just really honored to provide that space. So check it out, almost30.com.
Love you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.